Welcome to the Moved to Meditate podcast. I'm your host, Addie D. Hilster. This is a place for vibrant discussions about mindfulness, movement practices, and ways to find more balance and presence in daily life. Here you'll find resources to help you progress on your path, as well as insightful conversations with mindful movement, yoga, meditation, and Dharma teachers from a range of traditions. On this podcast, we spotlight embodied approaches to mindfulness and the more contemplative aspects of movement practice. Listen in and connect to a community of like-minded practitioners. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my first podcast episode of the year. Thanks so much for being here. Today we have a dynamic and inspiring conversation with Anika Voy about dance as a therapeutic somatic practice. We haven't explored the modality of dance a great deal here on the podcast, but of course, dance can also be a form of mindful movement and self-discovery. My guest today, Anika, is a trained psychotherapist who specializes in dance as a form of mind-body healing. I will read you a little bit more of her bio in a moment before I play the interview, and this is a really fun conversation coming up. I think you'll find that she brings a lot of joy and zest and depth to the table. Before we get to that, I want to mention two things. One is an interesting upcoming program that a colleague is offering, and I'll get to that in a moment too. But first, I just want to send some love to my former home of Los Angeles and all of my friends there. At the moment that I'm recording this, it's been a week since the devastating wildfires broke out in the Palisades and in Altadena. For 10 years, I lived in the neighborhood right next to Altadena, and I used to drive through Altadena several times each week to get from home to my yoga studio because it's right in between. And that's how I would avoid the freeways. And it was a beautiful drive. And what we've seen happen there in the last week is totally unthinkable. The loss of hundreds of houses and apartments and businesses and schools and churches and gathering spaces and wildlife areas. It's just heartbreaking. I know a lot of resource lists have been circulating around social media with suggestions of how we can help. But in case you're still looking for reputable places to donate and you're not sure, I can actually make a few recommendations. As it happens, my husband was deeply involved in nonprofit support in the foothills area of Los Angeles when he worked for the Pasadena Community Foundation for 7 years. They have a disaster relief fund in place for the wildfires, and they serve the Altadena and Pasadena areas, supporting the local nonprofit organizations there through grants. So supporting a community foundation is a really solid way to give to long-term rebuilding because they're in a really good position to distribute those funds over time to organizations that can have the greatest impact in all of the different categories that they fund, including social services and housing, education, senior programs, the arts, the environment. It's pretty comprehensive. They are at pasadenacf.org. So I'll put the links to all that I'm going to share and all the ones I'm going to mention in the show notes. But for a more immediate type of relief, you could also look for GoFundMe pages that are raising support for individuals and families that lost their homes. You can just go on GoFundMe.com and search under the emergency category, and there's so many. I also recommend the California Fire Foundation, which is quite an amazing organization. They take donations and use them to provide cash cards to firefighting teams so that the firefighters themselves can distribute immediate funds on the scene when someone loses their house to a fire. And this helps people pay for things like a hotel for the night or food right away when they've lost everything. The California Fire Foundation also has a fund to support firefighters and their families. The firefighters are so amazing. They literally work miracles doing the brave work they do, and sometimes it costs them in terms of their health and safety. They are literally risking their lives to help others. So the California Fire Foundation is well worth looking into. I know there are many tragedies going on in the world, And I don't always do this on the podcast, but this one hits very close to home for me. And I just wanted to share what I know about the area and some trusted organizations that I've personally given to now or in the past. So thanks for doing anything that you're doing to help LA heal, whether it's donating, volunteering, checking in on a friend, sharing information, or simply sending your metta and good wishes. Okay, the other thing I wanted to mention is this cool program called the Gentle Change Collective that's just opened up. This was created by Andrew Lang, who was a guest here on the podcast in 2023 in episode 69, and we talked about unmasking the inner critic. So he has started a kind of mentoring group program for people who are interested in social change, but aren't really sure how to fit themselves into that. Like maybe you don't know what it looks like for you to be an activist, or you feel really overwhelmed about the state of things and wonder how you could possibly make a difference. The Gentle Change Collective starts in February, and it looks like a really thoughtful program. So I encourage you to check it out at andrewlang.com or find the direct link to it in the show notes for the podcast here. It could be a really good way to go from hopelessly scrolling to finding meaningful actions that make sense for you and make a difference. All right, back to our topic for today. To quote a poem by Rumi, dance when you're broken open, dance if you've torn the bandage off, dance in the middle of the fighting, dance in your blood, dance when you're perfectly free. Our guest, Anika Voy, left the urban jungle of Berlin 6 years ago as a single mother to move to the tropical rainforests of Latin America. Her personal journey into self-discovery began with a severe episode of depression in her 20s. She realized she was living someone else's life and started searching for answers. That search led to dance therapy, where her lifelong love for movement and her growing passion for psychology merged. She first encountered dance therapy in 2011 as a patient in a psychosomatic rehab clinic. It sparked a deeper interest in movement and its positive impact on our well-being, which led to Pilates, yoga, and mindfulness practices like MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction, and MBCT, which is mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. In 2017, she became a certified alternative psychotherapist, and in 2019, she received her certification as a systemic dance therapist. She also had the opportunity to lead a project at the Taller de Danza in San Jose, integrating dance therapy methodologies into performance at Costa Rica's largest institution for dance and theater. Today, she works independently, offering monthly urban somatic dance sessions and one-on-one somatic dance mentoring, using movement as a profound tool for self-discovery and growth. Let's hear this conversation. Welcome, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us on the podcast today. Today, I have with me Anika Voy, who is a dance therapist, and I believe she is originally from Germany, but now based in Costa Rica. And I'm really excited because we're going to talk about dance as a somatic-based psychotherapeutic approach, a healing modality, a type of mindful movement. And it's an area of the sort of somatic mindful movement world that I haven't really explored so much, at least not on the podcast. I think I've had a few kind of experiences with dance myself. But I'm really excited to just learn more about this and to bring this to our podcast community. So welcome, Anika.
Hey Eddie, thank you so much for having me. I'm really, really excited to just dive deep into this topic, and thanks for having me here.
My pleasure. Why don't we just start with you sharing a little bit about your
Mm-hmm.
background and how you discovered dance as this therapeutic modality?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. So my name is Anika. You already said it, and I started to dance originally when I was a child. So that was my always my way of expressing myself. But I lost that for so many years while I grew up. And I found dance therapy, or it basically found me when you can actually say that I hit rock bottom in my life when I was in my 20s. And I discovered it as a therapeutic modality myself when I needed support. So I started having dance therapy sessions back then when I had a really like severe depression. And I just remembered that dance was always something that helped me really like to just feel my body again, get back in touch with what feels good, um, how I can actually impact my emotional well-being with movement. And so that was always something that fascinated me. And in the same time, I started to study like all you could find about personal growth and development, because I was just like in this stage of my life where I wanted to understand all of these things. And I just, yeah, recognized that nothing that I have learned was really supporting me and going through this challenge in my life, and that I grew up with so many like beliefs that were not mine. So that was a whole new world that actually opened up for me. And um, yeah, I started originally in a very like different industry, yeah, in like business administration and insurance, and like the yeah, how you call that, like the normal, just the normal business world, right, the corporate world. I was totally like involved in that, and it seemed like impossible for me to leave that space. Yeah, even though that it was always somehow like a secret dream within me. And when I became a mother for the first time, I was like, I'm going to take this time that I have now with my child to really rethink what I want to do with my life. And like, um, I need to change this, yeah, this job. I need to really like find something that really, where I can actually bring into the gifts that I have, or like more of the qualities that I have. So I started to research, and I just started by the same time to go really into dance classes again, to really work on my technique. And so, yeah, then I at some point wanted to study social work, but it wasn't really like, I never found this like what really resonated. So I was like searching all over the place,
Mm-hmm.
and then I found dance therapy as something you could actually do as a profession. And then I visited many places, and eventually I decided to start to study dance therapy in Munich. And I was back then living in Berlin, so I was then always traveling from Berlin to Munich for over 5 years to make this happen. And yeah, that's how it all started. During these 5 years, I also did my certification as a psychotherapist. um yeah, and this was how this, yeah, whole transformation actually started.
It's amazing
Mm,
how you had this kind of pivot point where the birth of your child was like an opportunity for rebirth for you
exactly.
in your life, for looking at your life in a different way
Hmm.
and pursuing something that felt more authentic,
Yeah.
it sounds like, to who you
Hmm.
are.
Yeah, because I was really asking myself, like, what do I want to give to him, because I can tell him a lot of things, but if I don't live that myself, like, what am I saying then? I can only be like the living example for him. And back then I wasn't even like realizing that this has such an impact also on him. But he was back then 1 year old when I started to study it. So he saw mommy traveling then and coming back like super energized and happy. And so, yeah, and he sees me dancing all the time. So for him, this is like his normal also to see his mom being really expressive. And I really love that this is this way that allows him also as well to express his emotions. And yeah.
I love that. I think that's just like a beautiful
Mm.
inspiration, or part of the inspiration for this courageous
Mm-hmm.
shift that you made, that seemed almost impossible at first.
Mm-hmm.
And I know so many people who have a background in dance, or who studied ballet or did dance growing up, and a lot of them did end up in like yoga or sort of movement
Mm-hmm.
worlds, not necessarily practicing or teaching dance though.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when people think about dance, a lot of times we look at it through this artistic lens, or look at it as a performance art, which, there is
Mm-hmm.
that part of dance. And maybe a lot of us don't even know or haven't encountered that dance could be approached other ways, or it
Mm,
could be like a somatic practice or
totally.
a body-based therapy.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the differences between dance as a performing art and dance as a healing
Mm-hmm.
practice. How does it look different?
Yeah. Well, that's yeah. Like there's so many misconceptions about dance actually. Like for and it's so complex. So I got to see where I'm starting with that.
That's a huge question, isn't
It is. It is.
it?
Yeah. So for me, like let's say let's start maybe with the facts that unite these both different or seemingly different areas, because eventually they are not that different. But what they have in common is really like the creative expression, and how both of these areas can actually support us to really step more into our strength and to um, bringing more out of that, out of who we actually are. And I see that in dance as performance, that there's like so many ways on how like movement reveals our life topics or like things about our personality that can be used also in performance. That's what I did basically when I did like a workshop in the biggest institution for dance here in Costa Rica. We were working on how to bring these dance therapeutic modalities into their performance, and we can
Hmm.
really like with that support the students to be more expressive and really be in like these performance niches where they can actually really shine, instead of maybe having them in some sort of the choreography where with their originally like temper they're not in the right place. You know what I mean? Because we have like our movement reveals something of our natural temper, and as well about the conditioning that we went through when we grew up. So
Hmm.
when I put someone in a performance according to his natural temper, he will thrive more as
Hmm.
if I let him do like basically movements that are like against this what naturally flows through that person. So we were working on how we could actually improve performances through acknowledging the students' abilities and strength.
That sounds like an element that is not usually present in
Mhm.
like a classical dance training,
No,
because that's
no.
more about like, here's the form,
Hmm.
here's the technique, you learn to fit the technique,
Exactly.
right?
Hmm.
Not so much this self-discovery aspect of like what it's you flipping it,
Hmm.
like what technique or what form of dance would best express
Yeah,
what's innate to me.
yeah. And I was basically working with the instructors to teach them these type of like tools and the knowledge around that, so they could then adjust their crew, their performances in that way. And and that is already like for somebody then really being like in that place where they can really thrive is already like empowering, I think. Right?
Hmm.
That's just my experience. And in general, I think there's this misconception that if you dance, you need to be a good dancer. For me, dance has
Hmm.
nothing to do with moves. For me, like dance is really like everything about trust, and
Hmm.
how much am I allowing others to see me, if that makes sense. That's also like a really wide field, but
Yeah.
yeah, for me that is like maybe that's a little bit, of course that's my personal lens on that, but this is also how I work with, especially with women. Like how can movement and dance support me in really acknowledging what I need, what my body actually tries to tell me, because like our body's language is probably the most important language we should learn. That's beside all the international languages that exist. Yeah, but that is something we are not like taught in school. Yeah, about like emotional management, about the connection to our bodies, and that's basically what dance gave to me on this personal journey of mine. And so it became actually a tool to really, when I have like challenging emotions, yeah, that we all have once in a while, or like often, sometimes not that often, but to really like take a moment to step back from it and give that emotion a space without drowning into it, yeah, and having
Mm-hmm.
actually a way to work with this emotion, because so often like nobody told us how to do that. When we feel anger, when we feel sad, what are we going to do with that? Well, you should not cry, or no, girls shouldn't be angry, or like don't behave like this. So like we all went, like when we grew up, like through different types of these situations, and then in adult life they cause us these issues that we don't know what to do when we feel this way, when we get triggered. So for me, it's like a really a good tool to learn to navigate these emotions, and to as well connect with our essence and our dreams even, yeah. It can be,
That's
it's like
beautiful.
it's meditation in motion, it's really no difference,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. A form of
Mm-hmm.
connection, self connection, and expression and exploration at the same time
Yeah.
is what it sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
So when you work with a client or lead a group, perhaps, do you give them specific steps to start with,
Mm-hmm.
or anything set like that, or is it completely intuitive?
Mm-hmm.
Or what if someone comes to you and they're like, but I don't even know where to start, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know how
Yeah.
to move intuitively,
Yeah.
like how do you do that?
Yeah. I read this idea of total like freedom. This is nice, but I really like throughout the years, for me, I discovered, okay, freedom also needs a sort of frame, or like some sort of structure.
Hmm.
Otherwise we are just in chaos and like not really like going any,
We're just
yeah,
lost,
it's
like
like
I don't
really,
even know where to,
exactly.
yeah.
Like,
I need a map.
yeah, I mean, like there's, here in Costa Rica, there's a lot of ecstatic dance, and when people are familiar with this type of work, it can be an amazing experience. But if you are a newbie to freeform movement, it can be totally overwhelming and really, really challenging. So how I have a lot of people that come to me when they had experiences with ecstatic dance and they found it terrible, because it just triggered them so much, but they actually love movement and
Mm,
dance. So then they come, and um, so what we try is to really create this safe space, as in the best way possible. Of course, there's always something, that can trigger you that is like impossible. It's not going to happen, but really I give impulses, I give structure. When we have group settings, I work with a specific structure with the music, how I arrange the music and guide them basically through the process. And we always like create an opening circle, so everybody can share like how are they here today, what is present. We set an intention before we actually start moving, and oftentimes at the beginning we start with some slow stretching, something just like very simple things to get actually in touch with the body, and to first, some people have like never listened to what their body actually said, or they come like just this Saturday we had an event, and a lady, she just shared, she's 75 years, and I was so happy she came. She said, Anika, I don't know if that is the right place for me, but like after she joined, she said, like, you know what, I didn't notice how much my upper body and my lower body were disconnected from each other, and through the dance I could be actually loving with this um discovery that I just made, and just move slowly with it. So also the dance doesn't mean you have to move a specific way in that, yeah. So when she was laying on the floor for a long time of the dance, and that was totally fine, because the intention for this work is that you listen to what your body says, and that can mean in the midst of the energetic dance while everybody else is like going wild, for example, or very energetic, you lay down on the floor and you just take a break. And that is what you never allowed yourself before. And this is also how we transfer that then into our day-to-day life, because the dance floor is the microcosmos of our life. Everything that we experience in life will for sure come up on the dance floor as well. So we work a lot with like really noticing, okay, this, when I move this way, or when I hear this specific music, what does happen in my body? It's a lot of body awareness. And yeah, like giving little impulses. I work a lot with pictures, like
Mm.
that they envision their intention, that they said when, sometimes, for example, people say, I want to let go of a specific thing, a situation, an emotion that is heavy. And then I bring this up throughout the process again. Okay, how does that feel in your body when you let go of this specific emotion, of a person, of like a situation that you don't want to like carry on any longer? So it's intuitively, but it's still guided. That's
Yeah,
mm,
there's a balance
mm,
there.
mm,
Yeah, I was thinking about that too because when I teach a yoga or a mindful movement class, people expect to get instructions
mm,
and to be guided and led. And every once in a while, somewhere in the class, I'll sort of pause and just say, okay, feel into your body and sense if there's some part of you that wants to move
mm,
and see if you can come up with a movement
mm,
and just let people kind of improvise for a moment.
mm,
And it's really interesting because people who are used to doing that, they can just do that. And every once in a while, someone will kind of look like a deer in headlights, like, what?
mm,
You're not guiding me right now? What am I supposed to do?
mm,
Tell me
mm,
what to do. And it can be a little jarring at first, to be given that freedom.
mm.
And so I think it's valuable to be given that freedom,
Yeah,
and to know you can't really make a mistake, or you're not going to do it wrong, or you're not going to hurt yourself if you're
yeah,
just really connecting to what you
mm,
feel in your body. But dance seems like it offers a really interesting opportunity to explore,
mm,
like
yeah,
having a step, like to a jumping off point or an impulse, as you said, and then
yeah.
seeing where it takes you.
Yeah, and totally depending on the people that come, whether they be like very new to the practice or more experienced, I adjust the instructions, give like more instructions or less. And it's, like, yeah, as you described it, it can be so challenging to all of the sudden have a freedom that we have never experienced in life, because everywhere where you look in society, there's right and wrong, things that you should do, the things that you shouldn't do. So then all of the sudden, not knowing anymore, okay, right and wrong, and then you compare yourself to the other person you see next to you, it's going to bring up a lot of your own topics, but that's why people come. They like, I mean, it's like, um it's not that it won't challenge you, to go in this type of work, but it's a process. Like, I would like, that's why I always say, like, it, like, make it a daily practice, because otherwise we have this one time experience, and maybe it was nice, or maybe it was really challenging, and then I give up on it because I think, oh, it's not for me, because I had all of these trigger coming up. That's totally
Mm.
normal. Like, in our dance therapy studies, we had the first year just self experience, and it was like a process, like with everything you can imagine, like all of the comparison, the self judgment, that is all like stuff that will reveal itself in the process. But if you keep going and work with that, and actually start like also loving these parts that are seemingly not lovable, that's when then transformation slowly happens. Because we always like this, I just saw that post of yours like some time ago, that there's no quick fix,
Oh yeah.
yeah, it's,
Yeah.
we like, if we want to truly substantially change, we need to make it a habit. And then just doing something like one time and expecting it's going to flip your world upside down, it might do, but then it's good to have some
Then
integration time as
you
well.
need to put that back together, right?
Exactly, yeah. And that's something also that is sometimes missing, um in like when I just refer to the ecstatic dances here, that we find often that there's no integration, or that
Mm-hmm.
that something is brought up, like, like a traumatic experience even, and then you are left alone with that. So that's where we really like continue this work, and also open the space for reflection and integration.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
I've never done ecstatic dance, but it sounds like kind of the environment you're describing is like one where people can go in and have this kind of heightened experience, and a lot can come up, or it's just high energy. Maybe it's really blissful,
Hmm.
maybe it's
Hmm.
sort of challenging, but then
Yeah.
we just kind of go on about our way, and there isn't really like a structure for
Yeah.
the next step or how to move through that.
Yeah. And I don't want to like, I don't want to say anything like negative in that aspect, because I also like to join these events. I just see it here a lot. Um, and I have joined these type of events in Germany as well. I just like, for my type of approach, that I just like know that people are often like overwhelmed by the experience.
Hmm.
So that's why I originally, my group offer here like was called urban ecstatic dance, because we live like in kind of a little city here. So and I wanted to express that it's a little bit more grounded. So but I switched it now to the urban somatic dance, because it's really a different
Mm.
experience. And um yeah, like, I mean, here in Costa Rica, there's a lot of spiritual offers, because dance is also offering like your spiritual world, but for me, it's like the grounding is the base, it's the foundation of everything.
Yeah, and like that post you were talking about that I did a while back on
Mm,
Instagram was one I did kind of out of like frustration
mm,
with seeing some of these messages on social media and even ads for
mm-hmm,
programs where it seems like the idea was just we're going to bring up all these emotions at once.
mm,
We're going to give you these like specific moves
mm-hmm,
that are going to bring up all the emotions at once, and then you will have healed your trauma because you will have gotten rid of it or gotten it out of your body or
mm-hmm,
something to that nature.
mm-hmm,
And it was gimmicky, and it did seem a bit irresponsible.
mm-hmm.
And so I had a little rant about it one day on my Instagram. but but I love hearing you talk about this being much more of a ongoing
Mm-hmm.
process and not about getting rid of anything.
No, no, it's truly like, I mean, I discovered dance therapy. I mean, as I told you, like, I was dancing since I was a child, but dance is like something that helps me heal when I was 24 years old. So that's 14 years ago. I'm still dancing. So, and it's like, it is a never ending journey, like personal development, growth, healing, that never ends. We always, we make one step, and then a new layer comes whenever we are ready for it. And that's the reality of the healing process, I would say, and but it's also beautiful, because like, I don't know, like, life becomes so much more like, I don't even know the word for it, like, there's so much variety in life. Like, for me, I just see, like, I'm like really excited about what's gonna happen in my life. I wouldn't be here in Costa Rica if I wouldn't be dancing. That is what this work brought up for me. That was a really like a dream that I had hidden for like so many years. And I remembered it. And it took me a few years to really realize it, because I was like just so scared to make these changes in my normal life, because it had a lot of consequences, of course. But it's just unfolding, and that's the beauty of it. And yeah, if we, depending on what our attention is in life, I really feel this is like for people that really look to live intentionally and think or believe maybe that life has a purpose. Then I would say go for it, like whatever tool you choose, but really go for it, and make it something. I don't say like do it every day. I would always like suggest to do it, yes, but at least a few times a week, take these moments for yourself, and like check in with yourself, and reflect on it, what happens in your experience while you dance. Because the dance in the end, it's like, show me how you dance, I tell you who you are. That's a little bit like provocative, this quote, but eventually you can see a lot, like when you see people dancing. And the more you really allow yourself to express yourself freely, and that can look in your very unique form. As I said, there's no right and wrong. It's Your dance is going to be more expressive over the years. It's impossible. It's not happening.
I think that's really interesting because, like, you were talking about sort of helping, just sort of identifying what is natural to someone
Mm-hmm.
out of, their probably their body's form and type and shape and
Mm-hmm.
size and height and all of their physical attributes, but also their whole life experiences and
Mm-hmm.
how that sort of comes out into some sort of form of movement that's authentic to them. Is there also an element of reconnecting with movements that we may have limited unconsciously, consciously or unconsciously, really, due to past experiences or ways we haven't allowed ourselves to move that could be, rediscovered
Mm-hmm.
through the process?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. There is like we can support with movement, like what actually our natural temper is. Like whenever I start working with clients one on one, the first thing I do is doing a movement analysis to see, okay, what is, we call that like a movement flow, which expresses like a lot about like our natural temper, what was, how we are born when we are babies, like. And then we have something that's called the efforts, and the efforts is the way how we express ourselves in the outside, and that is trained. That can be
Hmm.
aligned with that what our original temper is, but it could also be a total clash. And when we see these clashes, then we know, okay, something happened here throughout growing up. And then we of course work with that as well. But we, let's say somebody that's or whose posture is like really like folded, you can like be almost 100% sure that something happened throughout the second year of life, dealing with authority and parents, and finding your own self-expression. That's like something really related. And so there is these like specific yeah, life happenings that are related to specific ages and that express in movement. It's not always like there's like no box we can put somebody in, but it's just giving an example. Um,
Mm. Would you discuss that with someone if you were working like one on one and you observe their
yeah,
movement?
yeah,
Would it be like something that causes you to ask them a few questions or have them more share like verbally
yeah.
alongside the movement?
Yeah. We do this. Like normally when we work online and not in person, then they send me some videos before to a variation of different songs. I make my analysis, my conclusions that I think, and then we go through it, and I just ask questions to see if what I am thinking, what the impulses that I receive, if that is actually aligned with that what the client also experiences or experience in their childhood, for example.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and so it's like it's not just movement. It's never just movement, but it's really like bringing these two aspects together, and then we have the chance to really like repractice things, and derive from that action steps in day-to-day life. I have one client right now, and I saw it in her movement. She was actually, there was a lot of strength, but her movements were like super light. And um, so there was some sort of a clash, and we
Hmm.
talked about it. And she said, yeah, like I didn't have a chance to really like be powerful when I was a little girl. I had to like be nice and not be too loud. So that could be indicators. It's always just a work thesis. It's not like, okay,
Hmm.
this is like set in stone, but we discuss these things, and then from that, what we just revealed, we can like then work on like literally like practices, how
Introducing a new way of moving or
exactly.
trying something else on and seeing what then
Yeah,
comes out of that.
yeah,
Yeah, cool.
yeah.
I'm wondering, like, do you ever use particular movements to invoke a certain feeling state? Like you were talking about feeling powerful,
Hmm.
or if someone is angry, do you have certain gestures, or if they feel like um, sad, or what do you use a particular movement vocabulary to express or to work with certain emotions, or does that emerge more organically?
Yeah, I would say it emerges more than from moment to moment, but like, for example, with this specific client, we were then working on, okay, how can we bring like the strength and the powerful expression into her movements, like apart from that what she already knows. And so I was working with a specific type of music that would be like inviting these type of movements. We would work a lot with
Mm-hmm.
grounding exercises to really connect with the floor, with Mother Earth, if you want to say it like that. Something that really like supports us, and where we can really practice to do basically powerful footwork, for example. Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
like really like simple like things that I give them for homework, to practice. If it's, for example, grounding, and we can just like simple things as simple as laying on the floor. Yeah. If I need to like reevaluate how it feels to be safe in my body, for example. And we practice a lot with the floor. Yeah.
I've been thinking about this a bit. Just like here in the US, it's like we just had this election. It was very
Hmm.
intense, and we're feeling a lot.
Yeah, I can only
Almost
imagine.
everyone
Yeah.
is feeling a lot.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And so I was kind of one of the first classes that I taught after that, like a day and a half after that, people came into class and I just checked in with them
Mm,
and they said, okay, a lot of them were like, I feel numb, I feel shocked,
mm,
I feel like a zombie.
mhm, mhm,
And I was like, okay, freeze state, nervous system freeze
mhm,
state.
mhm,
So how do we like the class became just gently, how do we explore like a little bit of movement to wake up sensation and reconnect
mhm,
and bring melt the freeze a little, bring some fluidity back in. So it was kind of creative.
mhm,
And other times it was like, okay, if there's anger, so I can use some of these qigong forms
mhm,
that I
mhm,
know that are like a slow punch, or pulling a bowstring and
mhm,
setting an intention and feeling really strong in this wide stance in the body.
mhm,
And
mhm,
so it's just, those are just a couple of examples of like kind of drawing from qigong and nervous system theory, and just like how we might work with emotions, or we might be creative to meet
mhm.
emotions or express them through movement. And I would think dance gives you a lot of freedom and
Yeah.
opportunity to do something like that.
Yeah, that's again what you mentioned with the freedom, right? Because like there's not this like specific. I mean, if you go into performance, yes, then there's like the specific dance steps and moves. But in dance therapy, there's not like the specific form of, okay, we use like now this movement, you have it like in the Batania fundamental, for example. There's a lot of like different yeah, movement types that you could reintroduce, especially like coming from yeah, early childhood development, that we can integrate again and re-practice and re-nourish the body. But the example with anger is like, I would really like in that specific case work a lot with the foot, and really like stomping, really like
Mm-hmm.
bringing our weight down to the floor. Yeah, giving the weight back to the floor, and just really work with that. And then with an inviting music, yeah, that's basically what we did this Saturday as well. We were working a lot um with the root chakra. That was the specific topic, and it was a powerful experience. Yeah, we worked a lot with the African rhythms. And yeah, there's like, little aspects from various like angles that we could introduce, like to really work with these specific emotions. But yeah, anger is like really good when you work with the feet, and yeah, bring the weight to the floor. let it out, let it go through.
That's so interesting.
Mm,
What do you have any particular, like, what comes to mind if someone is really anxious or nervous or feeling fearful?
mhm,
Is there a particular something that pops into your mind that you might offer them
mhm.
dance gesture wise?
That's exactly like the what I just it's interesting that you bring exactly this emotion up, because that, I mean, I'm going a little bit in the chakra work right now because we just had it, but it's so it just works so well with it. The our sense of security and stability is blocked by fear. So when somebody's really like anxious, then I would really work a lot with grounding movements, being also in nature, connecting with the floor, really starting slow, not doing something too challenging at the beginning, really starting to build up this and foster this relationship with your body first, noticing where's the fear in my body, um, how can I sense it, how does it want to move. The same as you did in your class, yeah, like, okay, how can this fear like move through my body, and I just hold space for it, like really starting slow. um yeah, because the safe space is the foundation for everything that comes afterwards. If somebody's fearful the entire time, they won't, like, you won't come into like a more expressive or like um joyful like state, you know, that you first need to be okay with being fearful. That's the acceptance first, and then seeing, okay, how does it want to move, how can we be gentle with ourselves when we feel fearful, because as long as we fight it, it's most likely going to stay, you know. And
Or giving it more energy if we're
yeah, yeah,
resisting it?
yeah. And yeah, working with senses, you know, I try to always like also introduce like a different way of like experiencing beside moving. Like we work a lot with smells and yeah, also vision, but
Wh-
yeah,
Where you work a lot with, what was that word?
with like senses, like how you say that, is that the right correction?
Oh, smells?
Smells.
Did you say
Yeah,
smell,
like
scent?
yeah, because
Yeah.
the smell sense also brings our focus back to the present moment, for example.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we sometimes do, like in our opening circles, you know. And when somebody says, hey, yeah, I'm like really fearful today, and it's basically holding first the space for whatever is before moving on, not trying to
Mm-hmm.
just go over the emotion, or like there's no reason to be scared, we are safe here. No, no. Like yeah, we really need to like acknowledge what's present, and start from there.
I think that's so important.
Yeah.
That's something that can be missing, I think, from certain
Mhm.
environments and certain, um, even class settings, and the sort of like wellness arena where we're more focused on
Mm.
kind of the outcome that we want to have, and we might miss that step of actually just meeting what is
Mhm.
here and working with what is true right now for
Yeah.
us, and then trying to sort of skip that step or bypass that to just get to the like
Mm.
polished happy ending.
Yeah, and that's where we come back to the quick fix, right? Like that's
Yeah.
and it's just not that. Like emotions want to be felt. That's and if we give them a space to be felt, um, then they can also like go. You know, it's like nothing is temporary. Like an emotion comes and goes, and then just having the tools to yeah to basically take care for yourself. It can be a simple reflection question like what does make me feel safe, who does make me feel safe, where do I feel safe, if I don't feel safe right now, what is the little step that I can do right now that would help me to feel a little bit more comfortable, like, you know,
Hmm.
by step, little by little.
How can I just make it a little easier to be with this
Mm-hmm.
in this moment?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't have to go away for like totally. It's okay if it's a little bit better, you know. Or if I at least know, okay. I mean, when I'm not in class, what can I do for myself if that happens to me in my place at home, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, because this is building those skills
these
and
muscles.
that toolkit,
Exactly.
these muscles. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And sometimes it
Is
can also
this
be just breathing. Yeah, taking, but because we like our breath starts getting really flat, we get like really like, yeah, hectic, nervous, and just taking a moment being with that can change everything already. You don't have to do any move, you know. Well, breath is also movement for me, but yeah, it can be as simple as that.
it doesn't have to necessarily be something you'd think of as doing a dance,
Exactly, because
the
if you're very
dance.
fearful, I mean, it could,
Yeah.
it can introduce like um, some sort of music, you know, to also work with that. But maybe then it's another somatic practice in that moment, you know. Or it is like when, as an example from our group sessions, when the energy is heightened and I feel all of a sudden I get anxious. Okay, then stepping away from that energy and just taking a moment to myself, and like that, honoring what I need in the moment beside what is happening in the outside. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you bring dance into your day, like outside of saying I'm going to a dance class or I'm taking an hour to dance?
Mm.
Are there like little mini moments of using these dance practices for you in the day?
Yeah, honestly, I couldn't live without it. This is the only thing that nobody will have. Like, also my kids, of course not. But like, no, but this, you cannot take this away from me. No, and it's like, or take everything but dance and my kids. Like, like this is not an option.
It's vitally
No,
important.
no, really, no. Like, and it's true. Like, it has really been like my most consistent practice ever in my life, and it's like that since years. I dance almost every day. Like this, if I don't dance for 3 days, I feel the difference. Not saying I feel necessarily bad, but I feel like kind of off my balance. And what my favorite thing to do is really like when the kids are sleeping and I had to do some work still on the computer or whatever, then I take at least like 30 minutes and dance. I mostly dance in the night because I don't know, this is like, it's, but I sometimes, I like,
She dances in
I
the
dance in
night.
the night in the darkness. No, but it's like somehow that helps me really to also enter these like states of where I like when I have open questions, I go really like,
Mm.
I take them into my dance. And it sounds maybe
Hmm.
weird, but like
No.
literally when I had this dream of moving abroad, I could see us moving to Costa Rica while I was dancing, and like envisioning like how this is, and also like what I want to create in the future for like with dance as a gift to share with others. You know, this is how like how I receive my answers. Let's say like that. For me, it's literally like a kind of a prayer, a meditation. So, and I like my best place to do that or time to do it is really in the night. And I also have to say that I like then don't sleep that much, but because sometimes I don't want to go to sleep afterwards, because then I just feel in that state. I'm like, I can't sleep now, but yeah.
You're too energized.
No, truly. Yeah. Sometimes, yes. Yeah. Um, yeah, but I also sometimes have my kitchen dances pretty often actually, but the nighttime dances are just the best. I don't know.
Yeah, that sounds, there's something very magical sounding in the way you describe that.
Mm.
And it makes total sense to me that it can be like a place of inquiry, where you take a question or an issue and you just sort of riff with it, move with
Mm.
it, and see what comes up.
Yeah.
And I had a teacher who used to talk about taking your question on a walk, and you sort of like set the question and you don't think about it consciously while you go walking, but you check back in after and
Mm.
you sort of see. And other people I know, they do this with like the labyrinth walking meditation,
Mm.
like take a question into the labyrinth,
Mm.
right? And those are all embodied. They're all ways of moving and kind of getting out of the thinking process of trying
Exactly.
to make a decision, or that's important too, but we over rely, I
Mm.
think, on, we disconnect from the body a lot and try to figure everything out mentally, and
True.
that's what we're taught.
That
That's what we're good
that's
at.
so true. Yeah, and I mean, like our head can get so much in the way, like in my experience, because like intuition, it comes from the body, like, and yeah, there's so much wisdom in reconnecting with our bodies. Like I believe like healing cannot go without the body. Like it's, for me, it's, I don't know, this needs to go hand in hand. The head is also our body, you know, like there's always this
Right.
separation, like, okay, the mind and the body, like, the
How
soul.
is your brain not part of your
Yeah,
body,
like,
right?
no, for real, like this, like it doesn't make sense to me.
It doesn't make sense either.
Mm,
It's just such a like strong concept that we've inherited that we barely question. And yeah,
mhm.
it's really funny though when you think about it.
Yeah, it's, and this intuition and this intuitive wisdom, it's something very quiet. So the mind oftentimes gets so loud, and then if we just only rely on the mind, like, we won't hear what is the true answer often, you know. So yeah, I'm really like a fan of fostering the relationship with our body and
Hmm.
understanding these like subtle signs.
I think we have to like this layer of mistrust of like the body's gonna tempt us or lead us astray, or we can't trust what it's telling us because it might not be
Hmm.
okay, and our mind needs to put a check on that. You know, some of that probably comes from like a sort of religious
Hmm.
upbringings of, you know, the body is sinful
Yeah,
or
totally.
misguided or something like that. That's a whole can of
Yeah,
worms.
yeah, and that's so sad. I mean, dance itself has been so condemned in religious context because it only had this like sexual connotation, but there's so much more to it, you know. And yeah, I believe that is still like something that subconsciously like affects a lot of people, and not getting too close to their, to the wisdom of their body, because it could be scary what you discover there, you know. Yeah, I mean, and it's, there's like some sort of truth, and like there's truth in it, because when we really connect with us, what, and with our inner world, we might receive answers that we, that the mind doesn't want to hear, you know, because it's like controversial to to our life that we live right now oftentimes. And then
Hmm.
there's the, yeah, the question, how do we integrate what we just discovered into our life, and how can we make the changes so we actually live more aligned with our true nature? That's the biggest challenge at all, I feel like, how to bring it into, or translate that, what I experience, into day-to-day action, because that's where we need it.
Yeah, I think that you also made an interesting point about how dance is so sexualized often,
Hmm.
and that dance, like if you think about it in terms of like, oh, it's going to a nightclub and dancing and trying to hook up with people,
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
it's about how you look and looking seductive or
Hmm. Hmm.
something like that. I think that could also be a barrier for people
Hmm.
to use dance in a more therapeutic way.
Yeah, totally. And it's also, if you see like people nowadays in like public, that you almost don't see anybody dancing without like alcohol or specific drugs or what, cigarettes. It's like you don't normally see people expressing themselves really like freely in public settings. Or if like somebody
Hmm.
would dance like that in public, you like people would like maybe have specific thoughts about you, whatever, you know. And that's like what yeah, holds people like oftentimes back from it. That's what I experience a lot also in the group settings, especially like also when men come to the classes. I feel like for men this is even like a bigger obstacle,
Hmm.
first saying that they like to dance, and then really dance like how it feels good to them, and not being like in a specific scenery. Yeah. And
Hmm.
in it, you know, also the dance, I mean, it can be something um where I rediscover my sensuality as a human being. That's also part of our
Totally.
life. And why does that always have to be something like so shameful, or we are loaded with guilt? That's also part of our human experience. And how to just, you know, that is actually life energy. And how do we, yeah, how do we channel that then, you know, because it's like, yeah, eventually probably not leading anywhere, if, as you would, like, as you said it, like just being with random people all the time, that feels then empty or whatever, you know. But like, how can I, this power, or my central energy, how can I bring this to life, and what does that mean to my life, what I want to create, you know, yeah. another whole new
Yeah.
field that we open
It
up.
is,
Yeah.
and it's
Mm,
I think it opens up a lot, and it
mm,
may open up some of those aspects
mm-hmm.
of us that other movement forms are less likely
Yeah.
to bring forward in the way that dance might.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really interesting to think about.
Yeah, like, and it helps also throughout the process to release a lot of like conceptions and triggers that we had, and like, yeah, free ourselves from judgments step by step, guided, like, most likely when somebody can support us in that way, because at the beginning it can be really like challenging, to face all of also the shadow parts that we carry, or sometimes we just think that is something inappropriate, and it's actually something that holds a lot of power for our life, and a lot of, like, yeah, gifts that we could actually share if we would not suppress specific emotions or specific aspects of ourselves.
Makes sense.
Mm.
What would you say? What advice would you give to someone who's hearing this and thinking that's interesting, but I'm kind of hesitant. I really think I can't dance, or I don't have rhythm, or I'm just going to embarrass
Hmm.
myself.
I would say, or was the question what I would suggest or what I would answer?
Yeah. What would you say to them? How would you try to give them the encouragement to try?
I would say, like, you don't need to know anything about dance. The only thing you need is a little bit of openness and curiosity to step into something new. But you can get rid of your, like, thoughts about appearance, about the right steps. It has nothing to do with that. It's not about performance. It's really about finding your own dance. How does your own dance look like? How do you bring your dance into your life? I always say, like, your life is your dance floor. That's really how it is. Yeah. What do you discover in your dance? How can you translate that into your life and bring more of yourself into this world?
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I love
It's
that.
more like really remembering that, or becoming whole. I mean, we are whole, but like remembering that, there's nothing like that. We don't have to be fixed, or there's nothing wrong with us. Remembering that we are, like, worthy and all of these things, like lovable, and these really unique aspects of ourselves.
Yeah, that's so inspiring.
Mm.
I love it.
Yeah.
And this is like yet another beautiful path and modality for connecting with that
Mm-hmm.
wholeness.
Mm-hmm.
Anika, where can people connect further with you and your work if they're curious to learn more?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, they can find me via my webpage, livinginmotion.com, with the slashes in the middle.
I'll put the links
Yeah,
in the show notes too so people can
yeah.
find that.
And also on my Instagram is a way to reach out to me. Yeah, that's how people can find me. And I currently have the group settings here for basically the local community that lives here in the area where I live. But there's also ways to connect, if somebody wants to go deeper in these topics. Then yeah,
I think I'd work with you
yeah,
online.
yes, they can. Hmm.
Cool.
Yeah.
What about, do you have any suggested kind of resources to get started with if someone is just curious to learn more about dance therapy in general?
Well, there's a lot of
Like books
a
or
lot of literature. um oh god, yeah, like, I would not suggest to read, like, the books that I read while I was studying dance therapy, because
for academic
yeah,
stuff?
because it's just not like, I ever felt like these books don't really help, like, a normal person that just starts the journey. So I would basically actually share an action step, and this action step would be, sounds really simple, but really get a playlist on Spotify. It's like, no advertisement for Spotify, but I love this tool to create just like playlists for whatever you need, and really do some playlists for specific emotions. Yeah,
Do some moods, do some different
moods,
moods, and
exactly.
yeah.
How I mean, people always also, like, they hear different things in music. Yeah, so how does
Hmm.
joy sound for you? how does madness or anger sound for you? And like, go through the emotions, and then really like start using your music when you feel this way and see what's happening. Like I really would like suggest, like, first, like I'm always like the action taker, like,
I like
you
that.
know, like,
Rather than theorize and read,
I mean,
just like
I
try
love
it.
to read.
Try
I
it.
love to read, but that like to really have like something to start with, like I would say, like really start dancing 5 minutes every day according to the emotion that you feel, and see what's happening in your body without anything to reach, any goal. Just intentionally, I'm gonna connect with that what I'm feeling right now, and then you put your song. I also have like, who needs inspiration for that? I have variety of playlists on my account to
Okay,
download
cool.
once. Yeah, so
So if someone follows you on
yeah,
Spotify, they could find your
yeah.
playlist. Cool.
There's lots of inspiration for that there, but that's like a really, I feel like a good first thing to start with.
Well, anything else to add before we sign off?
You really like, your dance doesn't require any knowledge, any performance, nothing about the conceptions you might have about dance. Your dance is about trust and about you, about your life and your expression in life.
Thank you so much, Annika. It's been really fun to talk
Yeah.
about this, and I feel inspired to go create some playlists and
Yay.
see what
See what
happens.
happens. Yeah, I want to know. I want to know.
Thank you so much
Yeah.
for chatting with me today.
Thank you, Eddie, for having me.
So that's today's episode. If you enjoyed this conversation, please share it with a friend, subscribe on YouTube, or leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and help others find it that way. To learn more about my work, the Moved to Meditate class library, courses, or teacher trainings, go to movedtomeditate.yoga. This is Addie D. Hilster. Thanks so much for listening.